Hey, everybody. Welcome to Twist. I am sitting down today for another great crypto roundtable with Sunny and Vinny. We're breaking down all kinds of things, the future of Twitter and payments because of news that the executive in charge of rolling out micropayments has been laid off. Then we're going to talk about the latest Yuga Labs NFT dropping on the Bitcoin blockchain. If you've already lost interest, don't worry. We're going to tell you how much you need to care about this or not. Coinbase is trying to diversify its business by building sort of a developer AWS for big businesses. And Spotify is doing what might be kind of a cool NFT experiment. It's going to be a great conversation. It's going to be a great show. Stick with us. This Week in Startups is brought to you by Vanta. Compliance and security shouldn't be a deal breaker for startups to win new business. Vanta makes it easy for companies to get a SOC 2 report fast. Twist listeners can get $1,000 off for a limited time at vanta.com/twist. Squarespace, turn your idea into a new website. Go to squarespace.com/twist for a free trial. When you're ready to launch, use offer code TWIST to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. And Contra. Contra is a commission-free marketplace for freelancers and independent creators. Get $500 off your first hire at contra.com/twist. All right, everybody, welcome back to Crypto Roundtable. Every time we do this, it feels like it's been like more months since we did this. Is it just because we live every day twice in the interim with the news?
I think It's because everything moves so quickly that, we have to consider maybe making this more frequent.
Maybe a spin-off show.
Yes.
We'll just make all the decisions while Jason's skiing. Vinny Lingam and Sunny Mandra, welcome back to break down what's been happening in the crypto world. I want to start. Thank you, as always, for sending us an amazing selection of stories to work with. Although I would like to start with Twitter, because at the end of last year, I think I pinged the two of you and was like, what do we think is going to happen next year in crypto writ large? And a big part of the conversation about what was going to breathe new life kind of into Web3 or crypto or payments was whatever happens at Twitter with payments. And then now This week we found out that Twitter has laid off the executive who was working on that payments integration. And I want to know what the two of you are making of that.
Well, I don't really know what to make of Twitter. Thank you. Thanks for having us, Molly. I don't know what to make of Twitter right now. I think it's a bit of a show, and it's like I think it's clear to everyone, no matter whether you support Elon or not. It's not. I don't think it's in a good place. I've used it less now. I find that I've got lots of complaints and issues. I'm just going to be whatever. If it doesn't serve my needs, I don't use it. I think the payment stuff is payments are hard. People don't appreciate how hard payments are because there's just so many angles and ways to view things and look at it. And what I think Elon's trying to probably do is trying to build some sort of QQ style app. One app to rule them all type product with Twitter. And that was the thinking. I think my thoughts around this was he would integrate Doge and make Doge like a key part of the strategy for Twitter. I've yet to see that, and I think that I just think there's just too many moving parts at Twitter, and I think that it's just hard for him or anyone else to get their heads around things. And quite frankly, I'll be honest, I think that the Twitter people that are working at Twitter this past decade probably weren't. The ones that left recently, I think they weren't probably contributing too much to. And that's why Elon, I think cut it down a bit. I think they weren't to new product innovation. We just didn't see. I'd say there's one part that was interesting is the crypto stuff they were doing was actually pretty cool with being able to have a hexagon NFT profile picture, that sort of thing. There's some cool stuff happening, but on payments, I don't think Twitter got anywhere on payments, and so I don't blame them for saying, hey, let's go to the payments person, because what have they actually done on payments?
Sunny, what do you think? Are payments that hard?
Look, I think we're going to see something with crypto and Twitter. I think there's some natural intersections, everything from tipping to creator payments to the NFT stuff. I do think if you were to kind of sit back and this would probably be a good transition to you, Molly, but if you were to sit back and look at all the things Twitter has to work on right now, payments probably and crypto is just not top of the list, right? They've had to really deal with all the advertising fall off, right? And they've had to deal with all the changes that they've made. There's some core product features, like with the algorithms, right? There's been a lot of news around that. Like even, one day Elon made his Twitter private to see how it affected the algorithm and came back to being public. And then he unblocked a bunch of people around the algorithms to see how that was impacting the algorithm. So what I think is there's probably just a need to focus on the core product. And, if you think of the product in these like concentric circles with like sort of tweeting being at the core, payments and crypto just comes a bit later. And so I do think we'll see it. I just, they have to probably resolve the core product issues. I will say, something that reiterate what Vinny said, and I'd love to hear what you're saying. It feels like the energy that, around Twitter is down a little bit in terms of, like, I don't find myself, and maybe it's the tweaking of the algorithms, as engaged as I was before. But, I want to make sure that's not anecdotal. Like I don't have any kind of data behind it, but I'll kind of pass to you. That's sort of my take. I think they'll get to it, but I think they have core product features to figure out. That's my thing.
Yeah. I wasn't trying to trick you guys into talking about Twitter, to be clear. Like, I really want to know what you think about Dogecoin and payments, so we'll come back to that. But I can tell you that purely anecdotally, I feel the same way. I have gotten back double-digit hours in my life per week because I'm just not, I'm never there.
Yeah. And on the Dogecoin front, like maybe we'll just double click into that. Like, it is a really nice, potential integration because, Elon, he has this really great thing I think he did with like, maybe when he did the Time interview for Time Person of the Year, and he calls out like sort of the two cryptos. He calls out, Bitcoin as a store of value and Doge as a transactional system. And so, and the Doge team has done a lot of work in the last few months, right, in terms of continuing to innovate on the platform. They now have an integration where you can do payments, they can support transactions through like the SpaceX network. And so there's some really interesting things that they work on. Starlink network, probably more accurate. So they've done a bunch of really interesting things there. So offline transactions and such. So I feel like we'll see it happen. I feel like Doge will be what it is because Elon has just pretty much said that very clearly for a number of years. Just not right away.
Right. Vinny, why are payments so hard, and how important are, I guess, secondarily, like how important are payments as we build out functionality? Like it just feels like at the end of the day, everybody wants to understand what the functionality still of crypto is other than store of value. I know you're big on identity, but where do payments sit in that kind of Maslow's hierarchy of utility?
Yeah, the payments, getting in the payment flow is it's a very lucrative business because the amount of money that gets moved around. In the payments world, if you look at First Data, Fiserv, I mean, they're a gorilla, $2 or $3 trillion a year in payments they process on credit cards and other transactions. It's a good business, and once you're in that payment flow, you effectively control it. I mean, look at Apple Pay, look at the App Store. I mean, they take 30% cut in the App Store. They got Apple Pay where they make some interchange there as well on transactions. It's a booming business. So everybody wants to get into payments because it's just a very lucrative business. And the thing about payments is that like the marginal cost of a transaction is zero, so you're just making free money once you get to scale. And so The downside of payments is it's really run by the bureaucrats, right? Because it's highly regulated. And so if you have a situation where you're I'd say trying to get into payments, if you're a big company like Twitter, your revenue prevention department in the company is going to stop you from making money out of it because they're going to put a whole bunch of rules in place. And I always call the legal department the revenue prevention department because that's what they do. And so, legal and compliance will be all over it, making sure you can. And then also, that informs how the product's built as well. If you look at successful products like, Cash App, and that was, built by Mike Brock at Square, that was a very successful product, and I think they got to scale quickly, and then they sort of tightened up the regulatory side of it. Venmo did the same thing. Venmo was flying, very low to the ground when they got bought by PayPal for $20 million. Same story, right? They broke. They even paid fines after PayPal paid fines after they acquired it because they broke so many money transmission laws, whatever else. But that's why startups are better suited to doing payments than big companies because, well, if Venmo messed up, the investors lose some money. And if they succeed, well, they get bought by PayPal. It wasn't a huge outcome at that point, but they were able to disrupt payments in a big way. And then, obviously the regulations and taxes and reporting on Venmo now has come in, years later, but they've already used the time they've had to build a big lead. So it's really hard for a company like Twitter, which is a public company or was a public company, to go innovate in payments and beat the existing players out there without having to comply with all the onerous regulations, and the risk to the mothership is just too big. So the revenue prevention department steps in and stops you from getting escape velocity.
Yeah, I double on what Vinny said there. Like, I think there's a lot of promise around the simplicity around payments that exists, through crypto infrastructure.
Right.
But the reality is, like, once you kind of start interacting with, regulators and everyone else, like, it's less of the technology around making payments happen is the actual rails of moving money around. It's more around like support and I didn't get my money and all the infrastructure around that. And like, hey, was this a fraudulent transaction? Did this go to someone that shouldn't go?
Right.
And so, conceptually on a blockchain, you can build a peer-to-peer payment system very simply, right? With like, probably under 200 lines of code. Just the peer-to-peer payments bit. And there's some apps that do that really well. I think the minute you try to turn into a large company and you have a revenue prevention department, as Vinny calls it, then you end up with millions of lines of code that are dealing with all the customer support issues, all the regulatory issues. Right. And then you end up having to build all this additional infrastructure, which is, what exists at PayPal and every other place that.
And unfortunately, somebody sues you eventually, and then you have to call in one of those
or just someone calls in and says, I didn't get my payment. What happened?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yep.
Listen, it's 2023. The macro picture is a little shaky. It's uneasy out there, and tech is getting hit super hard. As such, you cannot afford to lose sales for silly stuff like not having your SOC 2 right now. If you are unsure about your SOC 2, you need to check out Vanta. Vanta makes it incredibly easy to get and renew your SOC 2. On average, Vanta customers are SOC 2 compliant in just 2 to 4 weeks. Compare that to 3 to 5 months without Vanta, huh? And they partner with over 24 audit firms who have been trained to file SOC 2 reports directly within Vanta. This is a total no-brainer. A bunch of my portfolio founders have used Vanta, and they've had amazing experiences. And if you don't have SOC 2 compliance, you can't close major customers. One major customer, that could be the difference between your startup thriving or going away. So get it done right now. Vanta's going to give you $1,000 off because you listen to this podcast. Think about it. $1,000 off. Vanta.com/twist. You got to write that down. Put it in your notes. Vanta.com/twist for $1,000 off your SOC 2.
Well, this is the biggest problem that Twitter hasn't solved yet is identity, right? And until they solve identity, they can't solve payments. And I think there's just, I've spoken to people at Twitter over the past decade about identity, 8 years since I've been involved in Civic. And I just say I'll be quite insulting. I'd say most of them are just a bunch of low-grade people who don't understand how the space works. And they've bumbled along for way too long at the company. And I've never been impressed with anyone I met at Twitter who told me they understood identity. It was always, trying to a bunch of hacks. And I can say that now because they're probably all fired. But they never really,
you can say that now to add insult to injury. You can just get your bag of salt and rub it in the wound.
I was never impressed with anyone. I met a bunch of them and I was never impressed with them. They never really quite got it. They pretended to get it. They did the whole corporate thing, which people in corporates do. But they never got it. And Twitter never solved identity. They just didn't. Can I tee up something to you? And I think it's outside our show notes, Molly, but I think it'd be a good one. Vinny, help us understand what an ideal Twitter identity system looks like, because I know it'll involve crypto from your perspective. So can you give us your pitch on, identity on Twitter, or not even be on Twitter, but just give it to us. Twitter should move to ingesting verifiable claims and credentials in a decentralized way. from you could they could even go as far as saying, hey, if here's an example, if you've got if you've got your ID established with even Experian or TransUnion or whatever, or a bank, you should be able to export those credentials to Twitter, and Twitter should be able to rely on third-party credentials to verify who you are. Twitter shouldn't be trying to verify every single person in the world because it's a global service. They don't have the ability to go and dig into every single service. What they should do is say, if you want to get verified, these are the tools we use. We use open source, we use DIDs, we use verifiable claims, whatever it is. And these are the providers you can use. And then just basically look at that entire web. This is a global basis, allowing people and companies to do attestations for people. So, for example, Sunny could come to Civic or his bank and say, hey, can I just get a credential that says I'm Sunny? And we could issue it to him, and he can go to Twitter, and Twitter could read that credential and verify it. And the thing about this system of verifiable credentials is that when Twitter reads that credential, Civic doesn't know it's being read. And so the privacy is, the loop is between Sunny and Twitter. So you solve the privacy issue because you're not letting people, like, for example, you log in with Google using OAuth. Google knows every time you log into everything using Google because the service is pinging Google, asking for the token. It's going back and forth. And Google knows that every time Sunny logs into Facebook as well. Every time OAuth is used to log into any single website or service, the Facebook knows about it. They're a centralized authority. With verifiable claims and credentials, you can basically present stuff. And as long as the cryptographic proofs are there and it hasn't been revoked, then you can assume that if he's still in possession of those keys, that's Sunny, and you could ask for additional challenges and whatever else around that. But Twitter, I think, is, they don't think about things that on a global perspective. It's very much a US perspective on identity. And then also the second thing is they were very focused on getting as many active user accounts as possible. Even if they were bots, they didn't care because they were just charging advertisers for tons of page views. And there was no real incentive to stamp out the bots and reduce page views. And so it was just like, let's not have a high friction service. Now, I think that what the algos should be done, what you should do with algos is this. You should say, if someone has a verifiable credential or claim or an identity attached to their account, that gives them a boost in the rankings. Now, that means it's, I will see your and Sunny's tweets way before I see some random tweet account I'm following that hasn't been verified. Doesn't mean that their account isn't being surfaced. It just means that it's lower priority. And what happens then is it forces people to say, hey, let's verify ourselves to get higher rankings in results, in Twitter results pages. And everyone who is a legit, reasonable person would say, okay, if I can do it in a private way and I can verify my identity and I get more engagement, I get more exposure to a bigger audience, there's a good economic reason why I would do that. So I will verify myself. For those who want anonymity or do not, and you can, by the way, you can do this in an anonymous way. You can do an assertion. So you could say, here's a verifiable credential, which proves I'm a US citizen uniquely, and I'm over the age of 21, and that's it. And if I try, and then using those credentials, I can never reassert those credentials on another Twitter account without being marked as the same person. But you don't know who I am. Yeah. So so these are things we can do. Things like drop tokens into wallets. So we can, Civic does it with Civic Pass right now. We can drop a soulbound token into an ETH wallet or a Solana wallet and verify that person's unique. And any other wallet they try and create wouldn't have that. You can't have replicate that same token. There are ways to do this. There's just no will for Twitter to change the way things work. They're just doing it like they've always done it. And that's the issue.
Well, to be fair, it has always been, and arguably even is now, even though we're in the middle of a messy transition away from it, an ad-supported social network. So like numbers were always, there's plenty of evidence that Facebook, specifically the product, has overstated its metrics to advertisers for a decade or more because the important thing is scale.
But we knew this, Molly, we knew this. This is not news. I tweeted about this many times.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, I feel like maybe saying that all of the people who you talked to didn't understand it, maybe what they were actually saying is, we have this business model. Your thing seems to involve a pretty big lift in terms of implementation and understanding on the part of our users. And yes, all of our engineers. And we have this other business model. So this isn't really necessarily worth our time.
Oh, absolutely. You're 100% right. There was a total conflict with the way they were making money. So the issue Twitter I have with them is that they were not interested in first of all, delivering value to advertisers. As an advertiser previously on Twitter, it was the biggest waste of money I've ever spent because what they count as interactions and engagements and views is just bull. I mean, it's just basically bot fodder, right? So I didn't bother with that.
I mean,
so
to be fair, you're talking about the entire publishing ecosystem at this point. Like, I don't know where you're getting value, honestly. Like, where are you getting value as an advertiser?
Google AdWords has always been fantastic. You can set your price, you can track it all the way to conversion. Twitter always was selling this sort of like amorphous, arcane, we have engagements and impressions and people are talking about you and blah, 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 not tracking direct sales, okay? When you look at direct sales,
and at the end of the day, it was a display ad at the end of the day too, right?
It was just a display ad.
A display ad.
Yeah. And then they count even bot views as impressions, which is rubbish, right? You're right. So the incentives didn't exist, but the bigger picture here, Molly. Sorry, let me finish the point. The bigger picture here is that Elon's not wrong. Okay, if you move to a advertiser list service or a lower advertiser service, and you can build real value in the system, the platform by having real people engage, you will have higher engagement rates, and the advertisers that are left behind will actually spend more money because they're going to get better ROI. You may have a smaller user base because you can't tout these big numbers, which aren't real anyway, but it would be a higher quality advertising platform.
Hey everybody, we're back with another Show Us Your Space contest in partnership with our friends at Squarespace. We did this last year. It was a huge hit. Here's how it works. We're going to give one Twist listener $1,000 in Squarespace credits, but we're doing it vertical specific this time. If you run any kind of an e-commerce related business, it could be a D2C brand, a consumer marketplace, a consumer subscription service, online course, you get the idea. Head to showusyourspace.com. That's it. And that's going to redirect you to one of my tweets from @Jason. Reply to the tweet with a short video, an image, a link, a GIF, whatever that shows off your e-commerce site on Squarespace. Then the team is going to pick a winner and we're going to give them $1,000 in a Squarespace gift card. That's right. If you want to be an entrepreneur, you want to start a side project, a hustle, Squarespace is how you do it. On Squarespace, you can build or sell anything. We love it here at launch. We use it for Remote Demo Day, countless other projects, and the features are amazing. They've got templates, analytics, inventory management, APIs, everything. And it's optimized for mobile. It's going to look great on an iPhone, an Android phone. Everything just looks perfect. And you can even sell courses directly inside of Squarespace and keep the 15% that other platforms are taking. Listen, it's your money. Keep it. Here's your call to action. It's so simple. Head to squarespace.com/twist to start your free trial. And when you're ready to launch, use the offer code TWIST to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain.
If I could build a little bit, taking it back to like ID systems for a bit, and we can transition from this one, but this is a good topic. So I dropped something in our chat, like India launched this national ID system called the Aadhaar system. I think it was launched like back in 2009 or 10. It's been a long time. I think they have, almost over 1 billion people on this system now, and it's incredible. It really implements a vision of what Vinny is talking about. And so, every system in India, whether it's banking, your telephone, whether you're getting subsidies from the government, it all runs through this national ID system in the way that, Vinny described. And I think the opportunity for Twitter, because it is sort of the one worldwide product, is to adopt something like this at sort of a worldwide scale and say, hey, let's let all, and Twitter just has this unique position more so than Facebook or Instagram or any of the other at scale networks, that they could implement sort of a worldwide ID system for all services. And that would be super powerful. And I think it'd be really cool to see them leverage a blockchain to do that and build on top of it. And there's I sent an article here. We can share it in the links about like what all the benefits that have come from India's national ID system.
It's also not without controversy, because there's a question about the aggregation of that much data. Wasn't there a project that was trying to do that? It was like, it involved a globe that would scan your eyeball and then you'd be issued a token.
WorldCoin. Yeah. I think Sam Altman was involved with that one too, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's the same. So Sunny's right. So this is my point. Okay. Twitter never actually put out a, developer framework, a developer kit, or anything like that and said, hey, this is a framework we're going to adopt for ID verification. All the providers out there, feel free to plug in, give credentials to your users, and they can reuse on the Twitter platform, and we'll ingest them. Okay. They've never done that. And that's the first thing they should be doing, because then they can say to every country in the world, if you've got a Home Affairs office or you've got a State Department or you've got IDAR servers, just make it, here's the spec. We're going to use a W3C compliant spec with verifiable credentials. We can use, you can use identity.com, which is nonprofit for the gateway. We have a gateway protocol that we can use. There's lots of things you can use to decentralize this and make sure it's private and secure, and that users can get access to their data. Right now, we're in a world where literally most IDs are issued physically and not digitally. And we need to get to a world where digital IDs are pervasive, where a bank can issue a digital ID to your phone. And by the way, they can do this today, right? So you can give a bank an SDK and they can make the credentials available inside their app. And then just, basically, app to app switching, basically feed the credentials into Twitter privately, securely, or the user can have their own wallet to store it, whatever. There's different ways to do this. The issue is that one of the problems with decentralized identity, and again, this is the thing I've been working on for a long time, is that none of the big players have ever had the guts to go and say, we're going to adopt this. And I think Twitter should be that player, because without that big massive
assertion,
pool,
right. So your assertion is after core issues with the product, then identity. Payments way later.
Well, I think identity is core. I think identity is core to Twitter.
Right.
Twitter's had so many problems with fake identities, fake accounts, whatever, hacks, etc.
But it seems like it fundamentally depends on what the business model of Twitter actually is going forward, which is still an open question.
Well, I think we can at least agree that the business model of selling ads that display to bots for advertisers is just a bad business model.
It's still happening.
I know. I think it's terrible. I hate it. I've built ad tech platforms. Like I think it's disgusting.
I mean, everything is changing in that front. I don't know if you guys heard my interview with the Neva CEO, but but like once you change, I actually think you even step back from identity all the way to search. Like once you change search and the incentives around search, and you start to have an ecosystem that is based on answers and not ad-supported answers, then all of a sudden this entire universe of things that rely on, I'm getting a little off topic here, but that rely on that ad-supported initial contact starts to go away, like the recipe pages that are 30 pages long because they want to serve you 1,000 ads. Anyway, I do have a thing that I really want to ask you guys about because I just want to understand it and know if it's a big deal. This week, Yuga Labs is back. This week, Yuga Labs is dropping this NFT collection on the Bitcoin blockchain using this Ordinals protocol, which I have been hearing about a lot. In fact, the 8 times I've been on Twitter in the last 4 weeks, somebody's been talking about Ordinals. So help me understand. It's the creators of Bored Apes. They're working on this project called 12-Fold. Mm-hmm. And it seems like the deal is that it maybe for the first time is an NFT project that actually interfaces with the Bitcoin blockchain.
I think it's the second one, but so let's kind of
12-Fold is or Ordinals is.
Ordinals is the protocol that they're using,
right? Yeah. And then 12-Fold is the product, and you're saying it's the second product using the Ordinals.
I believe
protocol?
So. Yeah,
got it.
And
help me understand the protocol.
Yeah, so let's kind of take a step back and start from Ethereum, and then we'll go why it's important on Bitcoin. Great. So most NFTs, which we've spent a lot of time talking about on this podcast in the past, have a combination of some information stored in the blockchain, and then generally some information stored off the blockchain, and maybe in some decentralized storage like IPFS or Filecoin or take your pick. And so the interesting thing there is that you require kind of those two pieces to come together to get the full information about what is a representation of the NFT. So that could be in that, there's the data behind the NFT could be put into the blockchain, and then the image itself or something like that lives in a storage system. There was one project. There's several projects. There's one project I'll reference that moved everything onto the blockchain in Ethereum. It's called On-Chain Monkeys. And what's interesting there is the entirety of the NFT is fully included into the transaction on the blockchain. And so what Ordinals really created was a similar thing on Bitcoin, where an entire NFT is encoded into like a Satoshi. And so all of the metadata, all of the information required. So there's no kind of secondary system required to recreate that. And I think that's what's exciting about this. Obviously it's on the Bitcoin ledger. And so it kind of, creates some excitement that there's some more utility on that ledger other than just, transactions which have been there. That said, that ledger is much more expensive to transact on. And so Vinny, I'm going to toss to you here. And, when you think about, doing these things at scale, you want to move to a place where the transaction speeds are high, the transaction costs are low. And so, overall, it's a very exciting development, but I don't think it's like an innovation forward in any way that creates sort of a new advancement for the space. But Vinny, I'll toss to you.
Okay.
There.
I mean, it's a too little, too late type of thing. I mean, this is we've been through this with Bitcoin 2017. The Bitcoin is the argument for Bitcoin to be more than a store of value, that battle was fought and lost in 2017. So this ordinals thing, it looks cool, but it's not going to scale because Bitcoin is not going to increase the block size. It doesn't matter. It's a kind of a flash in the pan. Maybe it becomes a layer 2 type solution, so it runs on Lightning or Stacks or whatever. It's not going to be something that natively runs on Bitcoin forever, where it's not going to get to scale. It'll be a niche thing which maybe a few people want to use and some hardcore Bitcoin people want to use, but it's not going to go. But Bitcoin can't handle it. It's 7 transactions per second. Bitcoin, for the entire Bitcoin network, it's not going to be able to handle this. And the mempool, they're going to clog up the mempool with this stuff. The fees will go up and down. It's basically in a hype cycle right now. The fundamental issue here is the Bitcoin blockchain is a 1 megabyte block every 10 minutes. There is no capacity for providing the world or even a country with the ability to create NFTs on Bitcoin. It doesn't work. The math doesn't add up. And so unless the community is willing to increase the block size, which we know it will not, then, it's not going to happen. Like there's an argument that this will probably work better on Bitcoin Cash or Bitcoin SV because they've got much bigger blocks and they can scale it. But that's not, that's not going to matter because,
and I think the
Solana and Ethereum and Polygon already have such a lead on all the others. I don't think, I think this is a dead end. But we'll see.
And the Yuga drop is only like 300, right? And so you can see that they've kind of had to navigate around that as well. So I think, between the transaction price, the speed, I don't think this becomes anything much bigger than sort of a little bit of a news splash here.
And it's very nichey. It's very nichey.
Not to cast any aspersions on Yuga Labs, but is it a news splash / quick bag grab? I mean, like you mint 300 or create 300 of these things. They get a lot of press and attention because it is inherently limited in all the ways that you've just laid out. Presumably, they're going to be really expensive. So, it feels like they just made 3 Rolls Royces or 300 Rolls Royces and sell those. Move on.
I don't think you're going to have a liquidity problem, and people aren't going to be able. There's what marketplaces are going to support this? Who's going to buy it? Why are they going to buy it? It's by the way, this is the same argument for NFTs and everywhere else. I'm a big NFT fan. But the value of NFTs is limited to the utility of the NFT or the collective value of the NFT. It's like art, right? So the perceived value is what it's worth.
So really, they're just creating a bunch of Rolls Royces that no one's going to want to buy. I'm having a hard time understanding why do it then.
I agree with you, Ma. I think it's a bit of a cash grab. I think there's 300 people out there in the Bitcoin ecosystem that will buy these, and that's it.
Yeah,
because they'll be like, these are the only NFTs that are actually etched onto the Bitcoin blockchain.
Well, actually, let's go back a second. Let's go back a second.
Diamond.
Okay? These are not the first. These are not the first NFTs issued on Bitcoin. The first ones were, I think, there were some rare peppies and whatever else done on Counterparty. You got Spells of Genesis. The Satoshi card back in 2015. This is not new. Now, Ordinals is a new protocol. But, they used Counterparty back in the day. So this isn't new. You can't tell me that this is a new way of, this is a new, that NFTs never existed on Bitcoin. They did. I still have keys to my Counterparty wallet that has, NFTs on the Bitcoin blockchain. So it's just basically a new cycle. It's a rehype. But Counterparty failed because Bitcoin fees are too high. Okay. And basically NFTs moved to Ethereum and obviously now Solana as well. So
the stuff is fees are a big issue. It's not helping the NFT reputation. It's really not. Because I think there's been this sense and this argument that well, it's all evolving, right? scammers come in, but then there's like a real thing, and then you build on the real thing, and then you eventually get to the internet as we know it today, for example. But this doesn't feel helpful. This doesn't feel accretive to the ecosystem.
Yeah. I mean, I'm never against experimentation. So experiment, go forth, prove me wrong, have this thing work out. Great. I don't see how the elephant in the room, quite frankly, right now is this big, 1 megabyte block limit. How we get past that, I don't understand it.
Right. I think, Molly, just you good example, Rolls-Royce, right? There are people out there that collect these very expensive sports cars, right? That are, they make 100 of a year or less. And so it's just one of those things that not very practical, is very desirable by a very few number of people, right? Bugattis, Koenigseggs, right? There's a whole bunch of these.
It's your money, man.
Yeah, go for it.
Hiring freelancers and doing that on project-based work is a brilliant way for you to grow your startup sustainably, right? You can't just hire everybody in every little vertical. And listen, there is a ton of top talent right now out there looking for work due to all the layoffs in tech. You know that. So you need to check out Contra, Contra. Contra is a commission-free marketplace for freelance and independent creators. So all that money that's going back and forth between you and your freelancers, it's not getting taken by some marketplace. No, there's no percentage-based upcharge when you do hire somebody. And they do all the vetting. They find the best people. On the other side of the marketplace, hey, if you're one of these laid-off tech workers and you got tons of skill, well, sign up for Contra. It's an amazing platform for you. And remember, like I said above, creators on Contra keep 100% of what they make. There's no fees. They specialize in design, engineering, social media, video, writing, and of course, AI. This is a really easy way for you to get great talent and to do it quickly. If you need project-based work, you need to check out Contra. It's that easy. And you know what? The best thing about freelancers is you only spend what you need to spend. You might have a really important social media project, but it's only for 6 months of the year. Or you need some videos, but you only need 10 of them, not 100 of them. They're going to do it fast. They're going to do it right. So here's your call to action. I can't believe it. $500 off your first hire at contra.com/twist. That's right. 5 crisp hundies waiting for you at Contra, Contra.com/twist.
Anyway, yes. What's going on with this Coinbase protocol situation?
Yeah. So at the highest level, it's an Ethereum L2. And so, that gives the ability to have pretty low transaction costs, high transaction throughput, and then, ultimately it can settle on Ethereum. Why are they doing this? Let's take a step back. So we've talked about this before. If you actually look at Coinbase, right, as a company, for the most part, it's a custodial system, and so a lot of what happens in Coinbase itself isn't really happening on the blockchain. Like they may so if you go to Coinbase and buy any type of asset, Bitcoin, Ethereum, you're most likely not buying it from like a blockchain transaction. You're probably buying it from a pool that exists within the Coinbase custodial system. So I think there's an interesting push to kind of create this system where a whole bunch of other applications and services, whether it's their own or others, start getting created. What you get by Coinbase putting it out there is you get, there's a lot of these L2s that exist. There's even, other blockchains. You get the backing of a public company running this system for you now. And so if you're if you're a company and you're thinking of building, on blockchain for whatever that may be, could be NFTs, could be, loyalty systems, and anything along those lines. Coinbase is like the AWS in this case, offering a blockchain that's run by them. Hopefully their services are put on it. They maintain the development and growth around it. And so it's a sort of a choice for enterprises and companies to build on. I don't think we see startups go there because I think startups are closer to, what's happening more at the core of, the crypto and blockchain ecosystem, whether it's in Solana or Polygon. But I do think if you're a big company and you're looking to leverage blockchain for some type of service you're building, it becomes sort of an answer that you can go after. Now, that said, all the big clouds also offer services. They don't have their own L2 that they're running. But, I believe, AWS has like an Ethereum service that they run if you want to, interact with it through that system. So I think it's a play as part of like becoming an infrastructure provider So
Right.
looking more and more like an AWS. Although I'm not sure, how much energy from enterprises right now, given everything that's happening, is going to go towards this. And unfortunately, with Coinbase, they had their own marketplace as well, like an NFT marketplace that didn't really take off. And so the track record here on these kind of expansions from their core offering hasn't been so great yet. But it's a trusted place for an enterprise. Vinny?
Got it.
And it's so funny. I was on a call early on where I actually said the exact same thing. Like for Coinbase, outside their core offering, nothing has really worked well. And it's not, for lack of trying. They just, I think, the core offering is what carried them, and their greatest the greatest value to Coinbase. They were over 100 million users worldwide. So they're trying to find ways to give their users other things to do. It still goes down to the debate. Like, first of all, the L2 space is overcrowded. The L1 space is overcrowded. We haven't seen clear winners emerge outside of Ethereum and maybe Solana in the L1 space. And in the L2 space, it's still very subjective because they're very highly centralized. All these L2s are, this is a very centralized L2. It's an L2 run by Coinbase. Like, you can't get it more centralized. So it's not in the ethos of crypto, from like an old school OG perspective, but it may be something which users find practical. But I think we're struggling to find, developers are spread thin across too many projects and too many layers. And there's just not enough users out there that are in the space. Like, people are just, not people are just not using crypto projects much. And so you're selling to the crypto community, which is a small community. And you could argue there's 100. If Coinbase only has I say the word only because it's not a lot. If Coinbase only has 110 million users worldwide out of 7 billion people, that's a very small number. And if you look at all of those 110 million people, how many of them are really hardcore crypto users that use on a regular basis? I would say maybe 20% to 30%. I think the rest are when the market's flying, they go into their accounts, they go buy some Bitcoin. When they lose money, they leave, they don't come back. So how many of those are real active accounts, or maybe they're storing some crypto? So then you're selling tools to, and apps to 20 million users, 30 million users worldwide who are really, really active and hardcore. And then you're competing with, a dozen L1s, a dozen or two L2s that are meaningful out there right now. And you're Coinbase, and you own the user, and you have all these users who are being verified. But now I don't think they've solved identity either. And so I don't know how this plays out. This just seems like too much competition for a bear market.
I have not. I'll tell you what. I'm just gonna confess right now, Vinny. I also have not solved identity. Help me. Just kidding. So it sounds like two things are happening here. In the case of Coinbase specifically, one thing that's happening is obviously a need for diversification. We know that if your primary business relies on trading volume and you're not seeing a lot of that, you definitely have to diversify. Creating some version of AWS, which prints cash for Amazon, seems kind of smart. Create a dev environment to help popularize the kinds of things that will bring more volume to Coinbase. The concern is, did you just create a dev playground and there are no kids in your neighborhood?
Yeah. And on the AWS example, Molly, I know this quite well. Like, one of my co-founders, my last company, was one of the early creators, wrote one of the first papers on AWS. That was created for for Amazon. The reason they had to create it is, they had to scale their e-commerce business, and every time these certain seasons came around, and they wanted the ability to do that sort of with their own control. And so, I think for Coinbase, what they really have to show, and that's where I started with that, is maybe if they move their 100+ million people and a set of their core services plus some additional services to this blockchain, and show the benefit of using it, sort of like as AWS did, we may see some innovation happen there. But I think in advance of that, I haven't seen anything about Coinbase moving their entire, trading system and everything else to this protocol, to this L2. And so, that's also a more difficult one. In the case of Amazon, there was we run our entire business on this thing. And so, and we get some leverage for doing it. You should do the same thing.
Got it. So this is more like we popped up a for pay playground in a neighborhood that doesn't have any kids, and we're not even going to send our own kids there.
Yeah, they haven't made that clear, but that's what it seems like.
It's a dangerous swing set.
Yeah.
I'm taking this too far. And then
I love it. I'm going to use that one. I like that. Foreplay playground.
I only have one skill in life, and it's translation through metaphor. Who would they be hoping to attract outside of that 20 million hardcore users that you mentioned, though? Like, would they be wanting to become the development platform of choice for like the next time a Starbucks wants to do an NFT based rewards program?
I would think, exactly.
Right.
Yeah. Like, some of the examples we've talked about before. So like big corporates that want to make a choice around a blockchain, and, they've probably seen, and I think on this, we got to give the Polygon team credit, right? Polygon is getting a lot of wins recently with, companies, definitely like Fortune 500 companies. And so they're probably looking at that saying, hey, how do we participate in that? Right. And so we stand by this blockchain. It's like, to Vinny's point, we run it. And bring your loyalty system here, bring your NFT project here, bring whatever, create marketplaces here. But they really now have to have a creation of an entire ecosystem, which is and that's also vastly different than AWS. When you create something on AWS, it's kind of usable everywhere. If you create something on this particular blockchain, it's not usable everywhere else, right? So you're really, it feels much more like walled garden than it does sort of an open platform.
Interesting. So, okay, before I let you go, we just have a few more minutes. What else is happening that's cool? We have other stories in our lineup, but let's do a little like a lightning round here.
I thought the Spotify testing, playlist that could be unlocked by NFT holders was pretty cool. This goes, we always kind of search for these use cases, and I thought that was very, very interesting. So, what did you guys think of that?
So token-gated playlists, let's do a little explanation here. According to a series of tweets by Kingship, I'm reading from TechCrunch, a metaverse band signed to Universal Music Group. Whew. That's happening already? Okay. Anyway, according to Kingship, the streaming company Spotify is piloting playlists that could be unlocked through NFTs in certain geographies. So under this pilot, Kingship has released a special playlist that could be accessed only by Kingship keycard NFT holders. So is this like a more complicated way to buy an album?
I think it's maybe a way to have a collectible, right, that's associated with the album. So, if we think back in the days, I don't think it ever happened in the CD era, but definitely in the vinyl era, weren't the I guess, what did you call it? Like the vinyl covers, collectibles for people. Yeah. And so this is a way to kind of recreate that in a digital environment. Like why take that joy away from folks?
Right.
And so I view it as that. It's kind of recreating something, and it feels exciting.
I feel like this could totally work with K-pop. Like, I don't know if you know, all of the kids who are into K-pop right now they buy CDs like crazy so that they can have the album art. And most of them don't even have CD players. Like they don't, they literally have a piece of dead media that most of them don't listen to. Although I did get my son's friend like a super cute stand-up CD player. It's like pink and she can, K-pop it up. I'm like, okay, great. You've unlocked a series of accessories that can go along with this, but this is very physical. Anyway, I could imagine K-pop kids would be very excited about this, or people who are really Spotify, just side note, kind of experimenting. They're also doing the AI playlists.
Yep. They are pushing really hard on a lot of these. That's great. Great to see that. Good innovation in the space. But yeah, so I kind of chalk it up to collectibles, right? I still have, my dad was a big fan of Pink Floyd, and he has like an original Dark Side of the Moon. And so that lives somewhere in my parents' house. So I can see the value there. Yeah.
I have a Purple Rain poster from the actual vinyl album.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, where do you keep it?
Actually, it's in my kid's room right now.
Awesome.
Do you have the album? I should probably protect it better, but yeah, I have the album. Yeah.
Oh, see, there you go. All right.
I get it. I get it.
Okay. All right.
I'm picking up what you're laying down. I'm not super into collectibles, but I could see it. I could see it. Vinny, what do you think? He's like, we're not talking about identity anymore. I've lost interest. How do you feel about Spotify's identity service? Have they nailed it?
No, well, that's they don't need to do identity.
Do you have collectibles? Are you a collectible person?
I just invested in collectibles.com. I don't think they've announced anything yet, but it's coming in.
What's that? Collectibles.com.
Well,
coming spring 2023.
Yeah. So I'm actually big into collectibles.
So you're all in on this space.
Well, I've got Magic the Gathering cards from 2003, I think. I got like 20-year-old cards. I collected tons of those. I've got, I collect physical Bitcoins. I have, and don't worry, they're not my house. I put them away safely somewhere. So
don't come over.
Yeah, don't come over trying to look for them. But it's I've always been into collectibles, comic books. I've got some comic books. I've got some, I like collectibles. I like digital collectibles. I mean, I'm a big NFT collector. I've got, hundreds of NFTs over the years, so collecting over 8 years. I think that digital collectibles are going to take off.
Collectibles as applied to music is definitely a long-standing.
I'm going to invest in Dequency as well, which is Keithley's company, and they're, not really collectibles yet, but they're doing some cool stuff in the music NFT space.
So NFTs are not dead unless, it sounds like today's takeaway is NFTs are not dead unless Yuga Labs continues to give them the worst reputation.
No, actually, I wouldn't say. I'd say
stop, Yuga.
I'd say Yuga can keep doing what they want to do. Like, I think the more experiments we run in NFTs, the better. I have an NFT project launching later this month called Explorers. You can go to, actually, I think the website's up, explorersnft.com.
Sonny, do you have anything you want to pitch today?
Sorry,
We've had a long civic pitch.
So no. Explorers.digital. There you go. And we're using Civic for identity, of course. But
this episode is sponsored by Vinny Lingham.
Amazing. On that note, the only thing that's happening in the crypto space right now is Vinny Lingham.
I'm bullish on NFTs. I think it's just that we're in the trough of disillusionment right now for NFTs. If you look at the Gartner curves, we're in that trough part, and we'll come out of it.
You know what's really positive to see, though, Molly, like through the arc of everything that's happened, since the formation of this podcast, is there are some awesome things being built right now. And the Spotify thing is exactly that. It's not, like, what are all the criticisms? A scam, no utility, right? And you're seeing all that come together. There's a real utility here, collectible, people can understand it. It's tied to a real world thing. Hey, I want to listen to this album from this team. It's not like this thing that just, people criticize like a picture of a monkey and, what does it really mean? And so we're actually, if you take a step back, like, this is pretty cool. Like, it's a real utility, and we know the physical analog for it, and let's run with it. It's being promoted by a company that's doing a lot of innovative things, right? In Spotify. So I think all these things are really good for the ecosystem right now.
And frankly, if it's a way for these artists to make money more directly and not rely on that crappy little split from Spotify streams, I think that could actually be really powerful.
Yeah, and you can support your favorite artists through that. You have something connected to them. They can create future things associated with this NFT. I think it's really, really great.
Yeah,
I think you'll see audience innovating. Audience will probably innovate a bit more in the NFT space, hopefully.
What do you think they'll do?
Who knows? But I've seen. I think it was Royal, which is. Justin Blau's company.
Yep.
Yeah. Between, what he's doing with like creating these NFTs that have the royalties attached to it, what Audius is doing, I think there's something, we as a community, we just need to support these guys and have them, keep experimenting. And guys, like, tech is only where it is today because of thousands of failed experiments, right? Yeah. And in fact, tens of thousands and probably millions of failed experiments over the past, 20, 30 years. And we every time we fail, the people who fail learn something, and then they either go build something new or someone else learns from their learnings, and innovation happens that way. Innovation isn't a function of, getting it right every single time, because that's not historically what's happened. We've gotten it wrong so often. It's that we learn from our mistakes, and then we find what does work, and then we double down on that, and we actually make it work.
And that's what I like about this segment. We tell you what stuff is Rolls Royce, and you don't have to care unless you have that kind of money, and what stuff is actually going to be useful to you in the future. Thanks, Vinny. Thanks, Sonny. See you next time.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Molly.
All right. Thanks for listening, everybody. We will see you back here tomorrow. If in the meantime you have suggestions for topics or news you want us to cover, email the producers at thisweekinstartups.com. And make sure you join us on Twitter, if you're still there, at TWI Startups. Have a great week.